Welcome back to another video of Finding Freedom. Now, due to some terminology, I would normally say episode, lesson, or whatever, but being that we're watching this on a motion capture digital format, i.e. otherwise known as a video, I want it to be, well, precise, specific, and not, have somebody jumble up my words or whatever. So, in this video, we're going to talk about how psychology and the disc profile actually affects us all. So let's get into it. I have 4 points to cover. The first one is, what is a disc profile? Well, a disc profile is like personality types, right? So you have your driver, your influential person, you have your stable support, your conscientiousness, and for those of you who like to watch Tai Lopez, he always talks about successful people being conscientious, and that's on the Hexaco score and everything else like that. But let's talk about the disc profile, because you have people like E.T., the hip-hop preacher and stuff like that, that talk about this and everything. And I don't know if he mentions this or not, but it's also utilized to characterize individuals. Now, what do I mean? Well, let's get into it and get an understanding first of the disc profile, and then we'll move forward. So there's, 4 strong personality types, just as blood types, and then you have the positive and negative that gets attached to it, or the RN or whatever, RH, whatever, the new one that came out. Now, the first color is red, and that goes to D, which is also known as a driver, someone who's very direct, goes after power, things like that. They don't want, and I learned this from Susie Murtha, a top-rated real estate agent, brilliant woman. I also helped her a little bit with the beginning phases of her SaaS, what's it called, company, not sauce, SaaS company. So that was pretty awesome. However, when it comes to understanding this, and it's a little windy out here, so you might hear it on the mic. The Matrix is acting up because I guess it doesn't want me to state this out loud. But red is normally fast-paced, meaning they don't want to hear a bunch of stuff. They want you to get straight to the point, be immediate, etc. Give me bullet points, so on and so forth. Tell me this is going to work, it's not going to work, etc. Because 1, they're probably highly intelligent. 2, they're also looking for a quick answer to make a quick decision, right? They don't have the luxury of time, right? So let's move into the next one. Influential and fun. This would be like your dancers, your social people, etc. People that are like socialites, somewhat similar, not too much, right? But they're the color yellow. Now, the color yellow is assigned to the I within the disc profile. They're influential and fun. What does this mean? Well, if you've ever seen somebody go out and they like to have fun and they don't care what you look like, they're just genuinely there to dance. So if they ask a pretty or attractive person, would you like to dance? And they say no, and then just move on to the next person. They're just there to actually dance and have a good time, but you need to see them dance with the person that everyone deems is unattractive, so that you know that they're not just out for something, right? And then they have to prove themselves on the dance floor, etc. And then you realize they're a nice person. They're not just trying to, one time, whatever the case may be, whatever terminology you use. Moving forward, we have S. Now, S is stable and support. And the color of S is green. Why is this? They're normally humble, right? Humble people are normally not only stable, but they also provide support. Remember, in certain books, it states to live a humble life. Meaning, if you ever listen to DMX or somebody else, if you're flashing it, you must not want it. Or Kendrick Lamar, sit down, be humble, etc. You don't need to tell the world if you have money or not. You don't need to flash it. You don't need to boast or be braggadocious, as they state, right? So these people are normally deemed as S, right? Stable, support, so on and so forth, and their color is green. Now, the last one, which would be C. This is conscientious and intimacy, right? This would be blue according to Google, right? I just did some quick research, but I'll point out some stuff in a minute, because if you go to a Honda dealership, normally their name tags also have a color code attached to it. I know they do this in certain locations, not every location, but you get the gist of it, right? So let's talk about this, right? So conscientious and intimacy, they're normally blue. Well, why is that important? Well, because you have people that normally are conscientious. They're thoughtful. They care about others, right? They also want intimacy, right? But they're, how do I say this? As Esther Perel says, into me see. They want you to see them just as much as they see you, right? Because they're probably trying to understand, so on and so forth, to develop that connection, right? And then, of course, in other color coding profiles, they have the color white. These are the peacekeepers, or the ones that want peace, and they're also very patient, right? And they're caring and slightly emotional at times, right? So now that we got the colors out of the way of the profile, let's move on to the other stuff, shall we? Point number 2. Why do I think the acronym is funny? For DISC? Well, if you study psychology, as Debbie Ann Lugo Guerrero has, my mother, along with several other people, Vivian Campbell, who's a psychiatrist that likes to experiment on veterans in the VA. It's one of those things where music can also impact one's emotions. If you listen to a sad song, do you feel sad? If you listen to the blues, do you have the blues, right? Are you in your feelings, right? Or if you listen to upbeat music, are you happy? Are you excited? What does that feeling give you, right? Does it come off, right? So if you listen to hip hop, DMX, Rakim, KRS-One, Jay-Z, Lil Boozy, Lotto, Cardi B, etc., what emotion does it make you want to exude, express, so on and so forth, right? And last time I checked, the music used to go on CDs, right? A CD-ROM or a disc, so on and so forth. Before, it used to be a record, etc. All right. So, I mean, think about that. Now we have, well, MP3s, your phone, social media, etc., but it has to get played somewhere, right? So let's continue. That was point number 2. There's just a little reason why I think the disc profile is just like an entendre, a metaphor, or analogy for so many things. As I stated in my online lecture series called Class, which is Creativity, Logic, Art, Science, and Spirituality, how it all comes together, and giving my own opinions and understanding based upon what I learned on my own. Think about that for a second. Right? Because anybody could go to a library, anybody can really look something up. If you could afford a cheap $50 smartphone from Walmart and go to a local McDonald's or Starbucks with a Wi-Fi, you can do the same thing as well as visit a library. Think about it. Now, point number 3, and this is just an analogy and play on words. However, Star Trek comes into this, right? And the reason why I want to make this connection, and this distinct connection, is because of the disc profile and the colors that are assigned to everyone on the show, as well as the disc profile, right? So you figure, right? You have Captain Picard, right? He is a very powerful person. It also talks about his job, etc. But he wears the color red sometimes, right? And if you've seen certain episodes, he's wearing the color red, which he's very direct, to the point, etc. The character speaks psychologically in the same fashion, right? Then you have Spock or the Medbay and things like that. They wear blue sometimes, right? Well, what did I state earlier? According to Google and research, etc., these people are normally intimate or conscientious. They're thoughtful, right? And in order to be in the medical field or healthcare field, you have to have that characteristic within you. Now, if you were to also watch Strange New Worlds, there is a person that's in the med bay that also wears white. This person is also patient, so on and so forth. But you have to understand that in the medical field, you also have to be patient. Doesn't mean that you are entitled to, well, force something to happen if there is a mishap, misdiagnosis, or whatever, because somebody wants to play scientist or carry out some psychological operation. As long as this person thinks this, we could get away with this, and then we can entrap them by asking them, well, what do they think this is, right? It's not the brightest or smartest idea in the world, but people do it all the time. And then, of course, the captain. If you've seen other episodes, you have Kirk, not the one that got shot, but other ones. And then Strange New Worlds and things like that, they wear the color yellow or gold, right? Sometimes green occasionally, right? And that would deem that they were the captain or the commander or whatever. But then again, Picard wore red and they switched off. So where was the rank and insignia, right? Because the color may just also pertain to personality type, occupation, etc. But it got very confusing. And I remember there was this female by the name of Vivian Winsel. We were going to a white elephant party or a Christmas party or whatever, and I wore a t-shirt, and she's like, you're going to need a different color t-shirt to confuse them, so on and so forth. And I was like, I actually just feel comfortable wearing this, and it's easy to use, but I'll put on a holiday shirt or whatever. So I put on my green Merry Christmas shirt on, went to the party, got introduced to a lot of people. Some people said stuff in there that I don't know how they came across that information, but don't ever repeat that again because you out yourself all the time. So it was very interesting, right? But I got to meet a lot of people. We talked about Star Wars, Star Trek. I think I won like a little bobblehead or whatever. And it was funny because the bobblehead that I got looked like an African American holding a blue lightsaber, right? And remind you, the disc profile and Star Wars and Star Trek and all that, the colors also mean something, right? The red lightsaber, you're on the dark side. Everything has meaning, but if you don't try to identify something, you're just going to take it as such. So what was interesting about this is that when I opened up my mystery gift and it was that little Jedi, whatever, African American, somebody was like, oh, you got a black Jedi. And I was like, it's a African American Jedi. It's not a black Jedi. This jacket is black, and I haven't seen anybody this color. So, one, understand what you're stating, because you don't know what in the world is coming out of your mouth right now, right? Because I know people that come from other countries that look just like African Americans in the United States, and they're from a different country, right? If you ever went to, where is it, in Charlotte, there's a place called Bokao Sushi. And the gentleman is actually, I think he's Japanese, but he's from Dominican Republic and doesn't speak a lick of Japanese. He speaks pure Spanish and a little bit of English. Awesome, total mind blown, right? For some people, right? When I was in Puerto Rico, there was a Chinese or Asian person that I met, or a Korean or whatever, outside of a restaurant speaking just like the natives in their own pitch, tone, language, and everything else, didn't know a lick of Chinese or Korean or anything else, right? So you have to try to understand people and understand if they know what they're speaking of. However, most people will make the mistake based out of fear and judgment and reveal their own true character because of, well, assumptions. And then, of course, cry wolf or whatever, and then somebody could write a whole book, so on and so forth, on what they did to you in your life, etc., make boatloads of cash on it, and then say, screw this, I'm going to stay rich, etc. I don't care if I messed up your life, this, that, and the third. There was a book that came out talking about something and Falcon and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And if you've seen other videos, a Blue Falcon is normally what we refer to as somebody that just creates more work for way more people, right? 9 times out of 10, it's the Air Force. I'm former Marine. It's a long story, but I'll get into that acronym as well, right? Because their logo looks like a falcon, right? Or the symbol for shield or whatever the case may be, right? You've seen that bird, right? And so it's just curious and interesting and funny, and quite honestly, they're a pain in the butt because they have a big budget. We call them the chair force because obviously when people go in and get deployed, the Marines go out first, handle business, Army comes in, establishes civil engineers, builds buildings, humanitarian hospitals, all that other stuff. Air Force comes in, establishes technology, so on and so forth, etc. And if you think about it like a business, you have a chairman of the board, then a board of directors, and everybody else underneath, hence chair force, right? So now let's talk about things like hiding in plain sight, right? What is an acronym? Well, an acronym is a group of words hiding in plain sight, but if you do not know what they mean, then you are left to your own understanding or what people tell you. And if we are not the stories that we are told, then what are we, right? So what's a Kiwi? Well, a Kiwi could be somebody that's from a certain location. Some people would say, where do Kiwis come from? Some people will say Australia. Some people will say New Zealand, down under, whatever the case may be. or it could be a knowledgeable, intelligent, wise, insightful individual, etc., right? Now, when it comes to the Constitution, which most people understand, right, or have heard of, right? Now, why do we have one if nobody abides by it, right? Nobody in the public, nobody in the legal field, nobody in the spiritual community, nobody in the Carolinas, because I traveled outside of the Carolinas. And when I say Carolinas, I mean North and South Carolina, right? Nobody acted the way they were acting in those locations in Virginia, in DC, in Atlanta, so on and so forth, etc., or Tennessee. It was just those two locations. Why? What message got out? Whose picture, whose face got out? So on and so forth, with a fictitious story, right? Without giving the whole synopsis of everything, right? Or understanding, right? And then the person that wrote the book, right, talking about, oh, we hate the French. Well, do you hate the French, or do you hate Marines that were trained in Paris Island, because Paris is also in France and you were in the Air Force? Got love for you, but if you had anything to do with dismantling everything because you were looking out for your homeboy to make $1, then I know why people sometimes say they shouldn't trust you, because of the fact that you are not to be trusted, right? Nobody ever asks the question, why is it that the Marines get told to watch over air, land, and sea, and then it gets broken up, right? Because if you study history, the Marines were a specialized unit comprised of all the branches. Now, riddle me this. Why is it that the more impressive of a budget and laxed of a uniform someone has, the better the duty station, right? How many people were in the Air Force, the Navy, not to knock on them, we're a department, but the Navy and the Army? Why do you guys have some kick-ass locations and duty stations? And Marines, we're lucky if we get to go to any of those, right? It's so weird. Now, what happens if secrets got out in those locations based upon a particular branch of service? Whether you have a tattoo of an anchor on your wrist, so on and so forth, or you have, your uniform, your ACUs, or whatever you call them, and you're wearing them out in public, whether you get stationed somewhere, so on and so forth. You're in the Air Force, you get to go to Germany and all these other places and party and live a lax life, work a standardized 9 to 5, sometimes get early. People wonder what the hell you do sometimes, right? Now, if secrets and stuff get out, or your technology gets tampered with, your phone gets cloned, you go onto a base. Now that phone acts as a contaminant to the base itself, and now it has the information because it's able to tag onto everyone's phone. Then what is a secret? What isn't secret, right? You were given a clearance, right? I think. So let me help educate some people, right? Now, in the Constitution, there's a word called union, right? Now, a union could be like a unity. It doesn't have to be gay, straight, so on and so forth, etc., blah, 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 right? But in union, by definition, means to come together, which is what happened in the United States according to history, and why New York City, Ellis Island, is also known as the melting pot, because of all the cultures, the religions, the people from around the world that came together and united as one in an area, right? Remember, there's more than one Statue of Liberty, right? There's 2 of them, but it doesn't sit on U.S. soil because the word liberty is different than the word freedom. If you do not understand that, I am sorry. Look it up. Now, why would it be interesting to say that Marines eat crayons, but we're also have the phrase of Uncle Sam's misguided children and all these other things? But then when we go through training, it's just like taking care of children. You got your day pack, you got a change of clothes, you got food, blah, 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 etc. What happens when you have a baby? You have a baby pack, right? And then you have a change of clothes, you have diapers, you have food, etc., right? And most branches, even the Army, trains like this, right? So on and so forth. And they get taught how to take care of children. Thing is, psychology would dictate that after a certain age, you are supposed to be treated a certain way, right? That's based upon what? Civilian psychology? The psychologists that are out there that have the ist? Psycho is in that word somewhere, right? So they like to experiment, right? They're not trained on law like a JD, they're an MD, right? Which means, yes, medicine is their specialty. However, medicine always wants to push the bounds for advancements just in case. But then they have experiments and everything else. Why? Well, sometimes those lines can get blurred based upon the stories that people are told. And if those stories are told in a manner in which that makes someone believe that it is okay to conduct psychological operations and experiments on particular individuals, what do you think the repercussions are going to be? Now, what's interesting is that the USMC is a acronym, right? So United States Marine Corps. But what if it stood for Union Special Military Cops, right? Because, I mean, they call them America's 911 force, right? And then we went over the disc profile with all the colors. We got red, we got blue, we got green fatigues, sometimes tan if we need them, right? We got the color white for our dress whites. We've got the nice gold buttons or the yellow buttons. Please loosen up our buttons, etc. But nobody asked or put those puzzle pieces together, right? And then you have both light and dark to everything, good and evil. But what is that by definition? Well, let's see, you got the police officers, you have FBI. FBI gets trained at Quantico. They also get trained by Marines at Marine Corps Base Quantico. If you need proof, ask my mother, because she's very nosy sometimes and needs valid proof on everything, trust me. So on and so forth. Other people are smart and know how to not only control their BPMs, but they also know how to play the game well because they're smart. You don't need a piece of paper to tell yourself or other people that you are intelligent. You just need to have a conversation with a motherfucker. And if you don't like their words, then something is wrong with you. Because I know that one of the times I went to go visit, there was a lady that was trying to get on base. Thankfully, she was talking to the civilian and not the Marine, etc. But the civilian knew how to speak the lingo, the jargon, and the way we do, because it's freedom of speech, right? And so she's trying to be as nice as possible, and the lady keeps giving her attitude, not understanding she's trying to get onto a military installation. And literally, I love this lady. She was a young, I would say in her 30s, Asian lady, so on and so forth. And she goes, did your friend that told you that you could go on base, that signed this paperwork, not inform you that you needed to put down your fingerprints, which states on the paper, please make sure your fingerprints are here? Were you just being lazy? Now, some people may take that as being sarcastic, etc., but I mean, think about it, right? If you're going onto a military base, do you just walk into someone's house? Do you just walk into a police station and start snooping around or whatever? Or do you go through proper procedures for a reason, right? And it was very interesting because in the Carolinas, for some reason, they wanted to use this technique or tactical lingo or paralinguistics or psychological or ebonics, right? Or how do I say this? Lost in translation if you've seen Ocean's 12, so on and so forth, where they meet with Matsui, right? Where the words get jumbled up, or the story of the Tower of Babel, etc., where the language got confusing, or how business is backwards when it comes to finances in comparison to personal finance, etc., right? Debits and credits could be good or bad depending on what side of the field you're on. If you're on business, a credit is a good thing. Debts are bad. If you're on the personal side, credits are bad, debits are good, right? So, I mean, think about it. If the Union was smart enough to create their own military personnel that would also look after the other branches, don't you think the streets would do the same thing? And then just teach them different characteristics or assign them, right, to a certain gang or whatever based upon their characteristics. If you're warm and loving, so on and so forth. If you're romantic, you go to the Latin kings, so on and so forth. They wear yellow. And what is yellow? Influential and fun. Have you ever hung out with a Hispanic person? We could party for days. We just need a house, permission, and some fucking music, right? Maybe some Coronas or hell, liquor, whatever the case may be. But we're fun to hang out with, and we're a community, right? Then, of course, you have, well, let's say the Bloods, right? Power, respect, etc., aggression, DMX, so on and so forth. Used to claim, sometimes, allegedly, that he was one, right? He was very direct. His voice was very powerful. He wore the color red, flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, the freaking title of his album, right? So on and so forth. The Crips that wear blue, they're conscientious. Think of Snoop Dogg, so on and so forth, right? They have intimacy, right? So on and so forth, right? So they're also caring and everything else. So where does this come from, right? How do people not see this, etc.? When you do penetration tests, you have red team and blue team, but you can also have a yellow and white team or a black team, so on and so forth, etc., right? That's just the different colors of the unknowns that are on the field. Maybe the ones dressed in white, so on and so forth, act a certain way, right? So we don't know those people. The ones dressed in black act a certain way, but we don't know those people, right? Then you have others, right? But the main ones that are fighting are the red team and the blue team, like Republicans and Democrats, right? You haven't seen them change their colors in years, right? Now, this is just food for thought for certain individuals, because there was a lot of crap and rumors and bullshit going on, not only within the Carolinas, but within my life. And I had to start documenting, recording, publishing, putting stuff out, making videos, doing more research, not to prove myself or come clean, but somebody wanted to make up a lie. Now, when I was building my business, when I had Pure Media, it was a digital marketing agency, I used to drink an obnoxious amount of energy drinks. And if you ever were in the fucking military, you know about caffeine and how much we drink of it, so on and so forth. And I worked myself so hard with lack of sleep that I forgot my name at one point. And my mother had to take me to the VA. And when they wanted to give me medication, instead of giving me something else to chill out or having a conversation, I looked at the gentleman, I said, why don't you take those pills first and then I'll take it, so that I trust you, because you don't look like a doctor. I know you're a nurse. I know the little screen says you should prescribe this, this, and this, but they didn't take vitals. They didn't take blood samples. They didn't do any of that. They just gave me a label within less than 48 hours. I then, for the last 5 to 6 years, had to deal with that shit. Nobody wants to remove it. Magically, they don't want to do stuff. Got a cavity search. If you were in the military or law enforcement, you know what a cavity search is. Or when they say put a muzzle on somebody, etc., it means to shut them up, meaning to put them in a compromising position. So there's a difference between entrapment and blackmail, because remember, law officers use one form of terminology. The streets use another form of terminology, right? But then you have the disc profile, etc. I went as far as trying to get a point across without getting in fucking trouble by literally showing the leaks that we have in the Carolinas, by getting access to a jukebox that you can sign up for an application, playing music on it. And when I walked in, someone lost their shit and gave everything away, which told me everything that I needed to know. Now, if you've ever seen any other videos that I've given within Finding Freedom, one of my jobs was to also help cross-train other law enforcement and other professionals that would go out into the field, etc. Thing is, they have limited knowledge for a fucking reason, just like everybody else. Because what happens, right? And I said this once before and I'll say it again. We get taught in certain fields how to break the rules and the laws and get trusted not to fucking do so. Even if somebody's trying to compromise us, we still get the question asked, why did you do something? Not why did you steal something, right? Because I'll give you an example. There was an issue with chow hall hours. People weren't getting time to go to chow, etc. Because I was at the head of my section, even though my rank did not mean I was in charge, so on and so forth, of my section by rank, by skill, knowledge, appearance, etc., demeanor, leading by example. I got put in charge of a section with people above my rank and below my rank before some dumb fuck wants to come to me and say, you ever had to work for somebody who's smarter than you? Yeah. Have you ever had to work for somebody who is a lower position than you? Possibly. Probably not. And so one of the things we used to do is we used to get tested, right? What's in the Nashville Glove Box Edition? This, that, and the third, right? And if you've ever seen the movie Zorro, there's a part where Antonio Banderas pulls out a sword, etc., and he's doing all this stuff, and Zorro goes, do you know how to use that thing? And he goes, yeah, the pointy end goes into the other person. It's like handing somebody a pistol, right? Do you know how to use that? Yeah, I aim, I know who I'm going to shoot, and I pull the trigger, and it shoots. Type. When you go to the ammunition supply point, where do you get your ammunition? There's a reason why it's separate, right? So you have bullets and you have pistols, right? Or you could turn people into fuel or fossil fuels real quick with that stuff, and they could get sold at BP, right? Now, sometimes I would literally talk to people in a direct manner, not giving a fuck. I've been NJP'd before, and even as a Lance Cooley, I would go up to gunnies. I would go up to officers that would come up with their paperwork, etc. Try to pull rank. Didn't care what branch they came from, etc. Like, let me see your stuff. Something's incorrect here. So just like an attorney normally represents someone in court, the ammo tech would represent somebody and explain things further in order to acquire ammunition. Whatever type of ammunition it was, whether it was small arms, large, etc., aviation, naval, whatever. And so I'd be like, do you know how to use the ammunition that you're taking for your so-called training exercise? Because we had officers that would do other shit, write ammunition off as expendable and then go sell them on the black market, etc. We would get, word back, let that go on for a while, and we would just be like, please keep going. Please keep going. Please continue. We'll give them a lot of warnings, but eventually when they get arrested, thrown in jail, go to a military prison, then go to a civilian prison, they have nothing to say because they had all the clues. They got all the warnings. It's done now, right? They should have known better. Keyword, should have known better. Why did I rob a Walmart? Well, because there was a discrepancy that didn't get reported up the chain of command. I was told there was always somebody that you can go to. Well, I told this to Chief Warrant Officer Wall one time, and that's our Matney. People were looking through my finances, kind of like when my mother does and stuff like that. Let me see his paperwork. Let me see this. He said this, blah, 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 blah. And then when we got to battalion in front of some really smart, high-ranking officers and enlisted people, they asked the right fucking questions. Why is an outstanding personnel in front of me stealing food and laundry detergent from Walmart when we clearly assigned them finances for that very thing? Everybody got quiet. Now, granted, they threatened me before I even went into the room. If I spoke out, if I told the truth, etc. Captain Lampson, I'm pretty sure, was the officer that was put in charge of the company at the time. Formerly came over from Recon as their officer or whatever the case may be. And he was saying how he was going to do all these bad things to me. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So on and so forth. Then first sergeant, so on and so forth, who definitely is just, she took a couple law classes and I guess she thought she was an attorney. I love her to this day. Christina, if you're out there, me and Cole Kennedy love you. Thank you for inviting us over for the Christmas party or the Thanksgiving party, etc. We'll get into that later. But, I got threatened there, which was very interesting. And then I asked her assistant, I said, what exactly did she say? She said, oh, well, I took some law classes and I studied game theory. So if he just lied to me, I just would have went back to the location, got the video, got them to write a statement, and then would have got his ass in real trouble, blah, blah, blah. Thank God he told the truth. I was like, this is why I don't lie. There's a reason. Nobody's asking the right fucking questions until we got to battalion in front of the lieutenant colonel and sergeant major. After they looked at everything, because I didn't, say that, oh, they took my financial statements. They combed through everything. Then they hid it, which was illegal at the time, still illegal, so on and so forth, etc. Right? Because they were trying to cover their own ass. for some reason, right? They NJP'd me, told me my punishment, sent me out the room. Now, when I left the room, there was a hellacious amount of screaming and yelling, and I'm sure that anybody in that position would be, well, deemed questionable, especially in that position, right? For not only letting things go on for so long, but carrying it out in different locations and facilities, right? How would you feel if you were doing something with your lady, you go to the hospital and they know everything that you know? Or you go somewhere else and they know, they've seen everything, right? So there's nothing new under the sun, right? So who are you bullshitting? Really, who are you bullshitting right now? I mean, if you got anything out of this video, please smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. But I remember I was in the hospital and they kept asking me, because somebody didn't like what I was saying, so they called the cops, said I was acting manic, and because that was the label attached to me within less than 48 hours, which if you read the medical journals and you can document and look at my metadata, I do go to libraries, including the law library, which I'll be visiting a medical library next, etc. I even had to literally call out the doctor from the VA, right? And flash a tape recorder that wasn't recording in order for her to understand something. Or maybe it was, I don't know. So, when it comes to all of that, they just leveraged everything. This person, we're going to conduct an experiment. Don't worry, we'll cover you. They don't know what's X, Y, and Z. They don't know what's going on, etc. This is a secure thing, message, whatever the case may be. Just know that this is the mark, right? Like in a con, like in that TV show Hustle that I always talk about, right? Where everybody knows their line except for the mark. So if you get a female to speak to him a certain way, he reacts this way. Just say he's being rude, this, that, and the third. Kick him out of the establishment. Or if you get a male to be aggressive with him or say certain things out loud, get him to see if you could trigger an emotion, because they just want to see what triggers them emotionally or what sets them off so they can, sneak on base? Get ammunition, go somewhere, be somewhere that they shouldn't because people are too fucking curious. Who trains Homeland Security? I don't know. Who trains people from the DOJ? I don't know. What's the job of the FBI and one of them? Well, when people are going through other three-letter agencies, etc., and they have to work in the civilian world, the FBI also catches those people as well, and they're trained to do as such. But if they get trained by us, then what the fuck are we supposed to do? Do you see why certain information is segmented and limited to certain individuals? So if you were to come to the ASP and I ask you, do you even know what you're doing? Do you know how to use that thing before you put it in a piece of equipment and kill everybody? Because at the center of the earth is a core, and it's called the Marine Corps, but spelled a different way because the S is fucking silent, like someone could be if you utilize the ammunition incorrectly. What's more valuable? Think about that. Are you told a story and that's why you're fighting? Are you trained in a certain way where you go out into the field with a pet animal, so on and so forth, as a group, and eventually you have to kill that animal and eat it? Well, that's a good psychological way to train somebody to be a psychopath and prepare them to actually take life, even the life of their best friend, right? You could walk into a room with them, and if they're told to kill you, they'll just kill you. They're trained that way, psychologically. Think about it, for a reason. Why? Other people aren't. They never asked questions. They just wanted to do that, right? Because that was a part of the job. They understood the fucking assignment, right? But nobody ever asks proper questions until they run up on the wrong person or get caught, etc. Right? Using children, saying other stupid shit. Fix your face. You can't read body language? So I hope you guys took this video as a educational piece, because I want people to start reading, educating themselves, right? I had one person, wanted to learn stuff and said the wrong thing in front of me. And she said, I wanted to learn how to control people with my words better. Why would you want to control people? Are you wanting to create more slavery? Because if you read the Constitution, popular sovereignty was in the preamble along with the word union. And it also fought against other things. Where the fuck did that ideology go to? Where did the terminology move to? Why is slavery or institutionalized slavery something that still exists? Why is it that the Department of Corrections in North Carolina also has cheap labor because of all the smart people that got thrown in jail or prison for a period of time, and then have them work on the stuff for them, whether that's the Department of Energy or whatever, because cheap labor, right? I'll pay you $1.50, you work on this. You need a job anyways. We got to keep you active. We got to reinstitutionalize you into the working force, right? Some people would have went to jail for kids, etc. Other people went to the Marine Corps, which shows you how to take care of kids, no matter what age they are. Remember, Pitbull said something very, very clever, smart, and intelligent. He said that when you're a child and you're learning how to walk, everybody's rooting for you to walk, right? You fall, it's okay, get back up. You got to do it, so on and so forth, because they want you to be like them. But then at a certain point, when you're trying to do better, oh, you stupid, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. Oh my God, Freddie, you don't have a college degree. You can't be a business owner. Oh my God, you need a college degree to be a business owner or own a franchise. Give up that dream, right? But who's the dumbass that wants to put out the fire? The one that wants you to be like them, right? So if they want you to be like them, why did they encourage people to be like them just enough, but not to exceed them? What happened to the encouragement? What happened to the support? What happened to the conversations? I'm not stating that that's what everybody needs, but some people do, right? What's with all the strong pushback, etc., right? Do you know why a dollar bill is green and why in other countries it's different colors? And then they made a movie with Paul Newman, I think it was called The Color of Money, and what human capital is. Since I'm in the capital of North Carolina, Raleigh, what do you protect? Because from what I've seen, it's a bunch of fucked up people that are doing fucked up things to each other, right? Because, yeah, drugs are sold on both sides. I don't give a fuck what people do there, right? Because if they wanted to be legit, they could just sell their drugs to the pharmaceutical companies that will put other shit in it that will cause side effects that give the doctors, something to do and solve, because they need something to do and solve. And then they have a multi-trillion billion-dollar agency or business. And then, of course, the only reason why it's actually illegal is because taxes aren't being paid. What if they opened up their own hospitals? What if they owned their own pharmaceutical companies? Don't you think that would create something different? It's like Tony Stark, right, in Iron Man. Big into weapons, so on and so forth. What if they went into healthcare? What if the military-industrial complex went into healthcare, right? Because people that were former military that seen their best friends die, lose their minds, commit suicide, 22 a day, Mission 22, all this other stuff. What if they went in, because they have a great understanding of what the terminology healthcare actually would mean, which means to actually care first, right? And to heal the people that come in. But is that good for business? Ask yourself that as a civilian or somebody on a paycheck or the take before, well, the secret and the word's out. I mean, think about it. Social media is everywhere, right? People have technology everywhere. And if you don't think Oracle and all these other large data brokers and companies can't get hacked into, go back online and see what happened to Microsoft when it got hacked and how many companies had to be delayed because of it. And if they got hacked and you own a Windows, and it might have happened to Apple as well, then how much information and bullshit of data that got converted into information thanks to large language models, hence i.e. language, right? Because it can translate to others outside or in the know that really want to help. How many people do you think it told exactly what someone was saying or stating? And then we wonder why certain things happen without asking or checking, right? You could say check in chess, you could say check in poker when you're gambling, but you shouldn't gamble with people's lives, nor play scientist or pill stack thinking you know what you're doing without doing proper research and a holistic approach, right? Because if you do batch medical treatment, meaning groups of people like a disc profile, you're going to miss a lot of things. This is why the JD, the legal side, juris doctorates, the attorneys, the lawyers, are very specific. Even when they perform a class action, they make sure that everything is in unison, right? They're coming together as a union, as a class, as a unit, so on and so forth, together, right? Just like when you graduate high school or college, you all went to the same classes. Some took a little bit different classes, but majority, about 80-20% or 80-20 principle, right? 80% of those classes you guys all shared, which means if an attorney or a group of them were to present that as a class action, well, then what would that do to the people that were implicated, that were in the know, that already had their technology tapped into, that also gave so many clues away, just to see how a psychological MK Ultra or whatever project would carry out? Under what? The sacrifice of the greater good, or the illusion, or the guise thereof? Lying through omission only works when people don't ask a question a specific way. If they ask it very specifically, and you're under oath, and you still lie under oath, even though omission, and there's a form called lying by way of omission, if they ask it very specifically with evidence and everything, and have proof, and you could literally digitally use a forensic digital analyst to go through deepfake videos to see if it's real or not, and you lie, you're held in contempt and you're thrown in prison and you are never to be trusted. Those are the laws of litigation from my understanding. So I hope that if everything does come out, whether it's in public, supreme, or secret courts, people ask questions very specifically with valid proof and evidence to dictate what should be done about the transgressions and what reformations, and, well, how can we also repair the damage that was done due to the lack of understanding and the wanting to abuse certain individuals. For what? Entertainment? During the Great Depression, right? Because everybody's talking about the Great Reset. During the Great Depression, the thing that made the most money was entertainment. It wasn't labor. It wasn't going to Walmart and working there. It wasn't Amazon. It was entertainment, because people were so depressed. Now, Fayetteville's not too far from here, and that's where Fort Bragg is, right? And the Green Berets have an expression, opreso de libre, right? To free the oppressed. But aren't depressed people oppressed? Where's your battle buddy? Solitude, exclusion, is an indicator. Has anybody asked why that person is in solitude or put themselves there? Has anybody questioned, why can't this person get a job even though they're applying to so many places? Why are they dicking around, doing little hazing rituals at anything? Do you think that when somebody presents knowledge, they're respected? Or do you need a piece of paper like a master's degree or a JD or MD or PhD in order to show people that you're intelligent to make a certain amount of money or to be treated some type of way. Remember when I mentioned the word black, right? I said African American. My jacket is the color black. You're brown, dark brown, whatever the case may be, right? People look like you that come from India. Your hair might be a little different. Your tonality may be different. But your color, tone, and everything else matches up. People from the Middle East look Hispanic sometimes. What's her name? Beautiful girl that looks like Jasmine. Sadia Khan, right? If she told you she was Spanish and she spoke Spanish in front of you with proper tonality and accent, you'd fucking believe it. Until you saw a driver's license from that country or passport or birth certificate and you found out that they were that. Be weary of certain people that you transgress against. Deliver us not into temptation, etc. You guys talk about this. You have people preaching about it. But what the fuck do you really stand for? What the fuck do you believe in? Because from what I've experienced, not fucking much. And if you got caught up on the whole Bible verse of a fucking prayer, and you don't like the taboo language coming out of my mouth because it's tickling your nervous system, making your brain think or move in a certain direction, check your emotions at the fucking door and listen to understand instead of trying to fucking respond, saying people don't understand certain things. Because I can tell you something. If a war actually broke out and they were to use all the capabilities and the capacity that exists, we would not stand a fucking chance because of the amount of division that exists. And if you ever seen the TV show Nikita, division was not a good entity. So imagine if a robotic dog was given your image, so on and so forth, could last for several hours with a gun attached to it, or iRobot, so on and so forth, and they released that onto humanity. What would you do? Would you try to hack the system and try to defeat it, launch an EMP like in the Matrix? Or stop before things get worse? Anyways, this has been another video of Finding Freedom. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you got anything out of it, please share it. And yeah, I'll be chopping this up later, putting some skits out and everything like that, or reels or shorts, whatever terminology they're using now. Pero si tú quieres más video como esto, díselo abajo. Put it down below. And for the person that heard me say ni hao at Roxy's bar and freaked out, you can download Rosetta Stone just like I have and learn different languages. Stop making judgments, judging people, and taking your shit out and whatever bullshit that you have going on other people based on a fucking story without having an actual conversation first. Peace.